think we can start. So welcome to the second part of tonight's public program, Summer School to School 2021. Just to mention, I mean, the whole program is a hybrid production, basically. So tonight we had two presentations joining us via video link. Urška Jurman's presentation is titled Garden as a Metaphor of Coexistence. We just had a presentation by Jeff Hu, who also shared with us a similar story, maybe a different context, a Western context. It was important for our program this year that we also bring in a different context. I'll just read briefly part of Urška's biography before we can start. So Urška graduated the art history and sociology of culture from the Faculty of Arts at the University of Ljubljana. She works as a curator, facilitator, editor, and art writer in the field of contemporary art and spatial culture. Since 2013, she's a program manager of Igor Zabel Association for Culture and Theory. She's a co-founder of Kud Obrat, with which she co-authored a number of spatial interventions in Ljubljana, among which is also the community garden beyond a construction site. Among others, she's the co-author of Ready to Change project with Polona Lovshin, P74 Gallery, Ljubljana 2004, and co-editor of Ready to Change Reader, again with Polona Lovshin 2005. Curator of the exhibition by Sanja Ivekovic, Public Works, and editor of its catalog, published by P74 Gallery in Ljubljana. She's also the co-editor of the thematic issue of the Art magazine about participation in architecture and urban planning with Apollonia Šustačić, and co-editor of architecture and art reader with Zabel in 2017. So the presentation will be deriving from Beyond the Construction Site, a community-based garden intervention in a dominant building site in Ljubljana. Urška Jurman will talk about her experience with the community garden as a space of coexistence and building relations between diverse participants, between a community space and the city, as well as between people and other living species. Since 2010, initiators and participants of the Beyond the Construction Site have been transforming a long fenced-off plot of land in Ljubljana into a community space intended for urban gardens, socializing, education, and culture. The project examines and shows the potential degraded urban areas and the possibility of their receiving new value through community-based interventions. Parallel to this, the project enhances and promotes possibilities for urban gardening and green city spaces, as well as more active inclusion of inhabitants in the decision-making about planning, development, and management of the city spaces. Urška, thank you so much once again. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Vala and Albert and the team of Summer School 21 for inviting me. I hope you hear me well.
Hear you well.
Super. So, yes, I will talk, but I hear my echo. Maybe there is something that is possible to do. I don't know. So I will talk about my experience with the community garden beyond the construction site that is running in Ljubljana since 2010. And yeah, this will be actually a presentation which is based on learning by doing. I learned recently by the organizers of the Summer School that you are also considering to maybe initiate next year a garden project in Pristina. So I prepared my presentation in a way that maybe hopefully could be also helpful for your process and preparations and considerations how to approach this kind of project. I will start now with my share screen. So, yeah, actually, the project started as part of the cultural festival, and the plot owner is the municipality of Ljubljana, and basically we started as a case of temporary use of space. This was actually the context when we started in 2010. In Ljubljana, there was, and also globally, still economic crisis, financial crisis, and also the crisis of construction sector very apparent. And Ljubljana was full of this kind of fenced off locations, which were basically closed construction sites or construction sites on hold. So this was one part of the context. And the other part of the context was also the lack of city allotment gardens. In Slovenia, allotment gardening has a very strong tradition. And few years before we started with our project, actually the new city administration was evicting hundreds of illegal gardens. And actually in the same year as we started in 2010, the city administration started to open formally organized city allotment gardens for rent, but actually the conditions that they sent for renting, as well the speed in which they were actually managing to open this kind of garden areas, was not addressing the diverse needs in the city for gardening. Just a few, one bird view on our location. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Actually, we are really located in the city center here on the top. It's a main train and bus station. And this green area here, it's where we are located. And actually, this area here is as well, at that time it was a closed construction site. So we started as part of the cultural festival, and this enabled us very much, or supported us in the process of acquiring permission to enter and to use this land. When we found out the ownership of the land, which is the municipality of Ljubljana, we actually wanted to make a contract for being there, for making use of this plot, which was actually fenced off for more than 10 years. Actually, before the crisis started, there were the plans to build on this site building, housing building, but then the crisis struck and this company went bankrupt, like many others in Slovenia at that time. When I say we, actually, I'm talking in the name of the initiators, which is a small group of architects and artists, and me as a cultural worker. We have a small NGO, a cultural and artistic association, and we spotted this location and actually approached the very known cultural organization in Ljubljana, Zavod Bunker, if they would be interested to support us to activate this site, since we learned that as part of their cultural festival, they are doing a program which is focusing on this neighborhood where this location is, and also the producer, this cultural organization is also actually located with their venue in this neighborhood. And part of their cultural festival was actually different programs related to city green and social spaces. So this seemed a very appropriate context for us to start, and also it proved us that it made really easier. Actually, it opened a door for us to be able to start a communication with the city administration. We did not want to actually do a guerrilla squatting project because of two reasons. The first reason was that our first goal was actually to make this long fenced off space like open and usable by people who are living and working in this area. And also that's why we did not want to put them in some, for them, uncomfortable, unpleasant situation which might come out of squatting or other illegal activities. And the other reason that we wanted to actually go into communication with the city administration and make an agreement for using this land was actually that we wanted to communicate different questions with which we are dealing since the beginning of this project. And one of these questions was actually the policy and of the city administration, how they organize city gardening practice. The other topic was what to do with all these closed and fenced off building sites in the city, because we were critical that this land is actually just treated also by the city administration like an asset, you know, like a financial asset, which is waiting for the better time that the city is able to sell it. But in between or in general, yeah, they don't consider actually also how this affects people living around these kind of areas. Also one of the issues, as you see here, which was for us very important, is actually to demonstrate and to show how this kind of, let's say, degraded urban areas can be really an important urban experiments, and where actually also the engagement of inhabitants in their development management is very important. So we were very interested, and still one of the important topic of this project is actually how to enhance the participation of the inhabitants in city development, city planning, and also management of city spaces. So we started actually as part of this cultural festival. We had actually this 2 weeks window of the cultural festival, and also we got first just the permission to be on this site for 2 weeks, but we were aware somehow that once you have a contract, even though for 2 weeks, it's easier to prolong it than just that you appear on the doors of the administration as some group of enthusiasts and want to do something. So we use this frame of cultural festival, which is also has a good media coverage, and also city administration is somehow very proud of this festival. We use this festival also as a tool to start pointing on the problems and as a tool to start communication. When we started the project, we did not have a clear already made plan what it will happen here. Our first actually idea was to open it, to make make it accessible, to use it as some kind of shared green space. But what does it mean? We wanted to actually define through the process in which actually exchange communication with people living and working around was very important. Actually, this process, we started already months before the festival, but in the time of the festival, we started, let's say, first public appearances and public events, like a meeting with few meetings with neighbors. And also another important input for our reflection, what might happen here beside the input of people, was actually the analysis, the research that the producer of this cultural festival did in that same year, I think. It was a sociological and anthropological analysis of this neighborhood, and both the input of people and this analysis actually pointed on two things: that people are missing and are wishing for green spaces in their neighborhood, for more green spaces, and also for more social spaces which are not bound to commercial services. So based on these inputs, actually, we then somehow drafted then the idea of a community garden. When we opened the door, actually when we made the door, because this area is fenced off with this protection construction fences, we wanted first to learn where we are coming. We wanted to learn what is here existing already. We were really somehow acting as a very careful guest, you know, because we were aware that this is a practice of temporary use of space, even though now it's lasting already 11 years. But at that time, we did not know, will it last 1 year, or maybe even not 1 year, or how long. So we wanted to learn where we are coming. And this is actually the field trip by a man who is an expert in wild plants. So we were learning, what is there growing, and cleaning at the beginning, as this was before actually abandoned construction site. There was a lot of also construction garbage as well as invasive plants. We had to brought soil to the to this site, because as you see, it's mostly pebbles on the floor. And then also we were confronted with the question how now to organize this space, how to actually, in spatial or architectural sense, how to organize the space. And our colleague, the artist and architect Polonca Lovšin, she did in the first week this action, a plan with a goat. She spent one whole day closed in with a goat. Her name was Hannah, or maybe she's still alive, I'm not sure. But so this goat was named Hannah, and actually she was used as a therapeutic animal for kids with different problems. So Polonca was following for 1 day the activities of this goat, Hannah. So where she was moving, there was, she drew a line for a path, or where she was resting, it was a place for resting, or where she was eating was something connected to food. And so made a plan with the goat, which at the end we did not implement, but it was actually artistic comment by Polonca Lovšin on how we should consider different ways of spatial planning, ways which are maybe not so maybe formally rigid, ways which consider needs also of other species, not just humans, even though even human needs are unfortunately often not considered enough in urban planning nowadays in the times of neoliberal times. The beginning was actually end of summer. We started like now in August, when actually the gardening season was basically over. And I have to say that not many local inhabitants, like neighbors, joined our actions. You know, when the months were passing, we were still coming there, we were still communicating, we were still having working and cleaning actions, you know, but not many people joined from the neighborhood, and we were questioning our approach, you know, and actually if it makes sense, if people are not joining, what are we doing wrong? And then at the beginning of next spring, in March, we had another round of communication. We did the posters and the leaflets that we dispatched along the neighborhood with the invitation, make your own garden. And we announced we will be whole months, every Saturday from certain time in certain time, present on the location, and that people can come if they are interested. And so this is the response of the first day when we were there. More than 20 people came who were interested to have a piece of land, a small garden in their neighborhood. And the same day, actually, we started acting and making small beds. So if we were not following the plan with the goat, actually our plan was and still is all the time a matter of negotiation. So we were very much, I have to say, improvising. And we were just taking care that we have enough space in between one garden plot that it's good to move, so, and that also certain areas stay empty as common shared space, because the garden functions actually in a way that people have their own individual garden beds, but there are also some shared communal areas, and actually the whole space is functioning as a shared communal space that has to be taken care of and negotiated and managed together. So what you here see on this desk, it says skupna greda, which in Slovene means common garden bed. So this is an image of gardening, and in this actually management of the shared space and shared activities and shared resources like water and tools, agreements are for sure very important. We as initiators at the beginning made 3 basic rules which were not to negotiate about. It was like leave it or take it. And these 3 rules were: 1, you have to do your own garden. We did not want to, you know, be a service for everything and to bring people everything done, because also from our experiences and also from theory of participation, we learned that as early And as actively you involve people, more they get actually connected to this space, and more also more responsible relation they build to this space which they co-create. So this was one rule. Of course, then when there were some older people we were helping, and also in the ways how we were doing the gardens, maybe you can see here, you know, people were using different shapes. They were using stones found on the location. Also at that time, there was still a lot of waste wood on location, which we used. So we really wanted to use as much as possible what was there. Then the second rule was that we don't use any chemicals in gardening. So we wanted to support ecological gardening. And the third rule is actually, besides taking care of your individual garden, you should take care also, according to your abilities, care of the whole space. But what does this mean? You know, how often, how do you control or monitor this? So this is actually something which is still open to a discussion. Our rules are now actually 1 page long, and are somehow often open in formulation, because we learned that it's not good to prescribe too much, because also the group, the community which is using and sharing this space is not a group that follows these you know, rules, but actually discussing and negotiating about these questions is what makes a group more connected, even though for sure the conflicts are necessary part of it. But through these negotiations, the space is growing relations and self-awareness. So we, at the beginning of every season, we have a community meeting where we go every year through our rules, and also to present these rules to new members, because every year somebody is stopping being active because of different reasons, and new people come. So we go every year through these rules. And also every year we discuss if we have to redefine something, maybe to add something, maybe to drop something out. So this question of how much to engage in these joint activities and taking care of the shared space, collective working actions, it's for sure very important. And here we are experimenting. Every year, actually, we have some kind of a new situation, a new agreement, how we try what works better or not so good, and we adapt next year again. So just to be practical, for example, at the beginning we didn't have written any you know, frequency, how often one has to participate, and then there was a wish that we should precise this more. So we included in the rules twice a year, people should take part in joint working actions. But then again, next year when was Corona and everything collapsed again, and we had to rethink everything anew. So this is an image of one of our meetings from the first year. And actually these collective working actions are also a very important, again, tool and situation where we connect stronger to each other, because we create something together, and we really made so much out of this empty hall, empty construction hall, and then often connected to these working activities, then we make, you know, also some fire or some food situation and so on. And then often also here concretely, a small group is working on how to make a tree house. So for many things which we make as an improvement or some new thing on the garden, also actually certain like project groups form, you know, people say, I'm interested to work on this, or I'm interested to work on that. And then many things happen also not as a, we have to all work on this, but as a small project groups. All this is actually a learning space, a learning situation. And even though most of the people at the beginning joined because of the wish to have a small piece of land, a small garden in the city, the social aspect of this project also became very important. Here is one workshop about ecological gardening, and actually when we do this kind of program on the garden, we always open it also to people who are not members of the garden. Maybe I should also explain, at the moment there is approximately 60 people active on this site as a members, okay, including kids. We have a lot of small, young families, and people pay also yearly contribution of 20 euro, out of which we cover all the expenses. The first 2 years we got some money through this producer, but then they pulled out, and basically we run this on self-contributions. And our association is also fundraising some money, but we actually fundraise this money for the public program, which is also happening on this site. Here we celebrate 5th year. And as I said, this actually this relation between a community space and the public space, or even a public sphere, was for us as initiators very important. This also became actually through the years as one of the rules that we have from May till September, end of September, once a week open doors, where we shift, we rotate actually who is there at that day in those hours. And when the garden is open for people who are interested or curious, would like to come to get some information or just to have a look, or maybe you know, to be in a shadow. Here is one flea market that we organized, and you can also see as part of this, you know, question of how to connect a community space to the outside, you know, we also exchanged part of the fence with this transparent chicken wire, that it enhances the communication between the inside and outside. But we did not dare to take a responsibility on us to put the fence completely down, because beside this plot where our garden is still a big construction hole. It's quite dangerous, and we would not somehow dare that this kind of space is open 24/7. So yeah, we organize from concerts, different cultural events, artistic also projects. We were hosting, for a few years, we were hosting a program for kids, actually learning about nature and being outside in the city. We had here, they are actually on the bee, actually observing bees, because we had also beehives, talks, lectures. We also occasionally publish kind of a small publication, and also as a as a practice or a project of temporary use, we were all the time also concerned how to act to have also more systemic maybe impact, or maybe to have some kind of more longer term impact. So reflection and theory is also important for us. We were editing one thematic issue on participation in architecture and urban planning by the invitation of Architect Association of Ljubljana. And also we became a member of Network for Space. It's a network that connects different local initiatives and NGOs that are active in spatial politics and practices in Slovenia. And in this network, we were active mostly within the group for temporary use of space and urban gardening. And within this co-organizing workshops and lectures, also working on like analysis of city policies and practices on that levels, also with the aim of shaping certain recommendations, both for the municipalities as well for people who would be interested in initiating some similar activities. This is a view on the garden from 2 years ago. Actually, in the introduction was said that I consider beyond the construction site as a relational space and a space of coexistence. And on one side, I was talking about how to coexist as a group of very diverse people, users. On the other side, how to coexist or build a relation as a community space to the outside, because we were really afraid that this space, because the door to enter has a key, so that this space would lead into actually excluding others who don't have this key. So with different activities like open hours or public programs, we try to balance this situation, as well as participating in different activities that are actually considering problems and questions that go beyond our concrete gardens, but that concern living in the city of Ljubljana, or maybe even considering, the planetary future. And the third level of relation, which was for us important from the beginning, was actually to find the balance, to find the relation between our human dynamics and gardening practice and the self-grown nature, and actually to find the balance and relation between the us humans and other living beings. And these were the trees, so small when we entered, so we had to protect them, not to step on them by accident. And these trees actually somehow overgrown this area, and also confronted us recently with a new challenge, because it's harder and harder to garden there, because there is less and less sun. So this was the first challenge, how to think of the future and development of this space now, considering this new situation, which is kind of wild park. And the other, so this you see now, the comparison, the garden in 2012 and now recently. And the other challenge and question is actually the context today in Ljubljana is completely different than in 2010 when we started, when all the investments, all the constructions were on hold. And now Ljubljana, since the last few years, it's actually booming in construction area. And this is a bugger, or how you say in English, I don't know, caterpillar, building a new residential, very expensive residential housing blocks just beside our garden. And also, actually, we learned this spring that the municipality of Ljubljana has also plans to sell this land where our garden is very soon to a private investor, also for building a new housing building there. So this is another challenge. And recently there was actually a formal procedure possibility of inhabitants of Ljubljana being able to send comments, proposals to the updated city spatial plan. And so also on that level, we acted, and we had a process of actually discussing how to respond now to this new situation. Also, people from the garden were participating in this discussion. And somehow we decided, you know, because we were aware that this is temporary use of space, we did not want to now demand or claim we would like to stay here. But actually what then we wrote and sent to the municipality was a proposal that the city does not sell this land, that the city stays the owner of this land and keep this little green pocket, and actually with the good practice of our example of inclusive and participatory spatial planning and development, and also management of the space, keep this green space and make it in an inclusive, participatory way, public, you know, not as now when still there are fences, but public green area in this neighborhood, which actually, especially with these new houses, is lacking green areas, and especially now being confronted with the climate crisis, we are actually Ljubljana and Slovenia are in average twice fast warming than the global average. All the green areas in the city center and close to the neighborhood areas are extremely important. So we will see what the city responds. We are not so hopeful, but this was for us important to do this step. And then also after we will get a response from the municipality to communicate this situation to the media and to the public. So this is yeah, this is my now fast, okay, good in timing presentation, and I'm happy if you have some more questions.
Thank you so much, Urška, for sharing this with us. Bleak or unpredictable future, but let's. I'm going to check if there are any questions in the room. I'm going to. Yeah, Karina, please.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear us?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Urška, for your presentation. It was so informative. Actually, the previous presentation by Jeff, I had so many questions, which actually you answered.
Okay.
Through your example. It's not, if you look at it practically from the operative perspective, I think that now we have a much better picture about the process, the actors, the methods, the challenges, and the potential future of such community engagement and initiatives in the first place. It would be nice to have or get together associations. I see the Association of Architects of Ljubljana are part of the network, and then you as an association, and then cultural organization all together, most probably as working as a platform. Is it a non-profit platform?
Yeah.
So as a non-profit platform, I think within this framework, we have a capacity, or we can do something similar also in Pristina. But what I wanted to ask actually, based on your experience and most probably careful research and observation throughout these years, is there a potential that I see that you have not a problem, but you are challenged with any decision that the city might take, depending on the, how shall I say, very normal neoliberal approach that our governments are taking those days. But do you think that you can manage as a platform to somehow grow these initiatives, these lessons learned initiatives into, let's say, into a policy, or in try through participatory approach to urban planning of Ljubljana to impose a new typology of, let's say, land use, which is a garden in this case. So we have all these sorts of greenery that we even normatively have different patterns in drawings, in urban plans, in master plans, but how about having this typology put in place formally? And I think in this way, perhaps this could be a way forward to formalize and this initiative, or to let's say, shift from community-based initiatives into something more sustainable that would lead to a sustainable future spatial planning for the city. And then another question from the experience, now this one. Have you found out, I mean, first of all, can you, is this a family garden or this is an individual garden? For example, can a husband have a garden and then the wife another garden?
Well, this example we didn't have, but as I said, we negotiate about every possible situation, but also a lot of people, and this is this building relations beyond construction site. You know, a lot of people are kind of part of this project, even though they don't have a own garden there, but they like to support this project in some different way, you know. So but yeah, usually it is that there is a family or one person or two friends or few friends having one plot or maybe two plots, depends. But there are also some people who they are not interested to garden, but they like to come when we have some working action, or they like to take care of the common spaces. So it's very diverse, because as I said, most of people join because of the wish to garden, but it's a diverse group of users. There are some people who have another, let's say, needs and wishes and interests, and so they also, should, and they find the place there.
And then is it the usual pattern that the elderly would much more prefer the gardening, that the women would much more prefer to gather and talk, that stereotype? And is there this consideration about, gender equality, or have you had some certain type of interest in developing? I mean, who usually takes decisions? I mean, I would love to know more about these considerations, which also add a lot to, to projects.
This is very important question, how we actually come to making decisions. Here we also, as initiators, had to learn a lot. And this is also the danger when, in these participatory projects, to have, we have to be very frank and open here that, there is not a completely equal position of all the participants, because when you are an initiator, you are actually in different position and role, even though you want to get rid of it. And you somehow, this was our 10-year, 11-year somehow consideration, and also kind of doubts, about our role. Should we step out? Should we completely leave the project running to people? And we had different also fluctuations in this regard. There were some years that we were much less involved. Then also we came to certain solution that we were involved at the beginning of the season, where we come together, we go through the rules, we make a plan, what we also do during this season, like what needs to be repaired, what needs to be improved. And then also there was always a certain, let's say, a team of coordinators that took over different responsibilities and different tasks. So basically, a majority of these daily things were taken care by people themselves. What we were then taking care of as initiators in the last years mostly was actually a public program. This and somehow, the beginning of the year, and also we were always somehow accompanying these coordinators in exchange with them, in support if they need, I don't know, whatever help, So we were facilitating the project all the time. Decision making, yes, we tried very much to always find a compromise solution, to find a solution that includes somehow, I don't know, different aspects, but for sure this is also not always possible. So in that sense, sometimes we were then making decisions by majority voting, the majority voting was then what was prevailing then was decided for. And then, in this kind of spaces, for sure, conflicts always happen. And I was at the beginning very afraid of these situations. But actually, I learned that they can be so productive. because it is always an opportunity to articulate a common ground. What is a common ground where we stand for, you know, and what is this basic minimum where we agree? And this is important. And also these things have to be repeated again and again. And I learned through this project that nothing is self-understood, you know, something that you thought it was 100 times said, you know, it doesn't matter. It has to be said again and again. And yes, conflicts are an opportunity to articulate a common ground, where we can stand all together, where we still can agree, you know. And then for sure, there were also 1 or 2 examples that somebody didn't agree with that, then they also left, you know, so this also happens for sure. Concerning now also this beginning of your question about recommendations and influencing city policies and so on, these are so long processes. These are so long processes, and we try this through our activities as part of this network for spatial planning. And also now we are working on a publication on 10 years of our garden, where we also want to gather our experiences and certain also recommendations. And I have to say also that in these 10 years, the understanding of the city concerning this kind of experimental spaces also and community initiatives is slowly changing. And now also the city, few years ago, they actually initiated one publicly funded program where they call for actually small community spatial activities which they fund. I still don't like the way how the city is doing this, because what is the danger on the other side, that the city likes to appropriate very much, you know. It's not that they are somehow enabling, but they have to somehow completely control the situation. So this is another danger. They understand somehow the need and the importance of this kind of spaces and initiatives, but the danger I see, at least in Ljubljana, it goes in that direction, is that they don't somehow that enabling either by, you know, some little seed money or by support of city companies, like, I don't know, we getting water for free, or taking garbage away, or getting some wood for free of the city company, you know, this kind of little supports. No, this is not enough for the city administration. They want to very much control the whole process somehow. I don't know, you had so many questions.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
Yeah, that's why I did.
Can I, if you don't?
Yeah, I'm curious to just maybe know a bit more about sort of the wider reach in terms of just the effect that the garden had within the immediate vicinity of where it was located. Both in terms of, you know, tangible results, maybe, I don't know, for instance, preservation of places of heritage. Those then were in turn cared for with the attention that the garden received, but also the intangible aspects of that. So, I mean, you've spoken about, yeah, kind of the solidarities, the kind of revitalization of the community, connection between people of different generations, things like that. It's a general question, but yeah, I'm just kind of curious to think, yeah, sort of about the contribution that the garden has given to this portion of the city.
You mean the concrete neighborhood where it's located?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah, one thing is, as you mentioned also, as garden is kind of relational space or relational object, many connections between people who are active on the garden and living in the neighborhood enhanced, you know. So this is one thing. In sense of like physical change, there was actually there was one interesting situation that another very important thing is actually that we do with all these trees which grown so much, we do actually contribute importantly to the better microclimate in this neighborhood. And this is also actually the point that people now living around, they don't want to have a new apartment building there, you know, because they have a lot of concrete already. So this is one, let's say, I don't know, probably short term if they start building there, but at the moment, this is also one contribution. And there was also one interesting situation close to our site. I mentioned at the beginning with this aerial photo, there was also another close construction site owned by the municipality. And municipality actually intended to make a temporary parking spaces, you know. Also, through our activities, how to deal with these close construction sites, because our project was also quite well covered in media, but not also just because of us, but we were one, let's say, part in this river. The city started to consider that it's not okay just to leave these spaces fenced off. But their response was also very, how to say, I don't know, short-sighted. Most of these temporary parking, temporary construction, close construction spaces, which were able to transform, the city started to transform in temporary parking spaces. And this, the municipality also intended for the close construction site just beside our garden. This was in 2015. 15, and we were in the process, this was in spring, of to prolong the contract, while we got the document that we have to immediately stop with our activities and go, you know, empty the site in 2 weeks. And we were kind of in shock, and we found this lady who was taking care of our contract, and basically we found out that the city wants to make a temporary parking space in this area. And we then called for a community meeting and explained the situation. And then the people, the users, responded that even though they are aware that this is a temporary space, but they said we are not willing to leave for another temporary spatial practice, which is so of not sustainable nature, you know, like temporary parking spaces in the city center. While at the same time, you know, the city administration, it's closing a big part of the city center for the car traffic, but still building parking spaces. So we actually were then communicating with these different departments, and also it came out that the Department for Protection of Environment was not aware of this intention of another department of the municipality, and so on. And actually they canceled this plan, and then the city initiated another temporary use of space practice on that other but it was a bit different nature. It was including different institutions and NGOs and initiatives. And it was then lasting few years. They said it's temporary use of space, but it was also functioning as a special experimental field. So this was also one of the effects, for example, of this of our activities, very concrete, for example. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anyone else? If I may, I mean, just few remarks, maybe. I mean, there's this feeling, to use the word, that the similar projects, or even of a different kind, which are connected somehow to the arts in Slovenia, are in some sort of defensive currently. You know, the demolition of ROG in Ljubljana, losing space, also the possible negotiations with the municipality to use this as a green space for new construction blocks, which is also some sort of a giving in to a new mode of how you treat urban sites, and rather than preserving and expanding, because what was achieved through these years of activity and community work, I mean, normally we would expect that this would expand, right? Mm-hmm. So different models in the city, more of the same, or even larger interventions, and rather, I mean, we are a bit outside, but what the feeling that we have is that it's very difficult to defend what was achieved so far. Mm-hmm. In these circumstances, when we are constantly, to use the word, attacked by being that a city administration or growing pressure from builders, construction companies, and similar, which are exercised as a pressure to the administration, which receives, let's say, taxes from construction companies and similar. So I'm just thinking, what are resistance strategies, others in play, if in case this proposal, this very gentle proposal to the city administration fails to be, let's say, approved. You know, if there are any discussions outside of the stakeholders, to call them like that, that created this garden, this space, to protect it, basically. Yeah. I think losing this ground would be just another step of more loss.
Yes, yes. I don't know. I cannot really give you now the answer, what would be our strategy, because really, yeah, we have to first see what will be the response, even though I think I know the answer already. But I think, and this was also for us important through the whole project and process, that we were acting also very kind of in a public sphere, with all these questions that we are now discussing, and building alliances with different, let's say, actors. And I think alone we will not be able to do much, you know. But also what we pointed in this how say letter, or yeah, to the city, is actually, this is an example of what is happening now recently in many places in Ljubljana. You know that the green areas are actually taken away for construction, and this is just not acceptable anymore. You know, the vice mayor of Ljubljana, he's an architect and urban planner, and he has the actually idea of how say, dancing, how say, that the city has to be built densely, not to expand it to the outside, which is also understandable from a lot of environmental issues, you know. But so a lot of former industrial sites are now being transformed into office or apartment areas. But when they start to take away the green areas, also in the middle of the neighborhoods, this is not possible anymore today in this actually situation of climate urgency, you know. So they are already forming, and they are active different initiatives in Ljubljana, being very critical and active on this too brutal somehow urban policy. And this was also somehow our point, not just, I mean, yes, based on our concrete example, but also how we want to develop and how we want to live in this city in general, you know. So yes, there is and must be even more intense public debate on that questions, and somehow we will join this public debate. But the strategy, I don't know. I cannot say at the moment. We didn't come so far to be that I'm able to share it. But also, I just also wanted to say what effect it had on the neighborhood. What was also for me very important to see is that more and more people from really the vicinity, the proximity of this garden are joining, you know. As maybe at the beginning of the project, there were many people joining who are living on completely other part of Ljubljana in the last years, and especially last year when the COVID lockdown happened. Now it's really a local project, you know. It's really mostly people from this neighborhood that are acting, that are active there. And also, you know, Vala asked also regarding the changes of the city policy about this allotment or urban gardening. Since we started in 2010, it changed also on that level. And they softened their approach. I mean, and yes, as I said, these are really slow processes, you know. But what is still very missing, and I think it's also very urgent for the future, is the problem of the Ljubljana city policy of urban gardens, allotment gardens, is that most of them are on the rim of the city, you know. They are not considering to maybe change the use of the land within the especially densely populated residential areas for the gardens. They are not there yet that they would somehow change just the green area into the garden, officially at least, or at least as a temporary practice somehow. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing with us this I think unique experience, and I hope it will continue. I mean, and I hope there'll be even more solidarity and even more possibilities to enhance the influence.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. You know, even if we continue, it will be a different kind of project, because actually the conditions also not just, I mean, now if we don't think of now construction intentions on that location, but as you saw, now the conditions on the site with this wild park are really not welcoming for the gardening. So in any case, this will have to be reconsidered into another kind of shared green area. We for example, just, you know, as a ideal scenario, if the land is not sold and the city actually is open for the process of reimagining this site as an open public green site, we would like to bring also our experiences from the garden, but yeah, it will not be, you know, as we started, a kind of a more typical garden project, because also this is also one question which is interesting for us, and actually the situation, how it changed on the location, made us thinking is how to think of public space as public environment, you know, like in a kind of extended way, not just in a sense of like a park as we know it, but I think different concepts of wild, also actually maybe even in the future, this kind of wild, neglected green areas will be protected, because they will be kind of pockets of biodiversity, you know, where, you know, people are not intervening so much. I mean, in this case, for sure, we would like to make it also friendly for people, but also there are concepts in sense of considering green city spaces that are more, let's say, sensitive to other species than just human, and actually considering green area more as observing than just also, you know, going there, even though this is also, as we saw in now COVID times, it's very important. I don't know, for example, there is interesting concept, it's called Miyawaki forest. I don't know if you are familiar. So this is a concept of enhancing also biodiversity in the city, affecting, improving the climate, but it's not a forest where we would go. It's actually, we can observe it, we can be guardian of it, we can take care of it, you know, but yeah, it's not in that sense, yeah, usual public park to go for a walk. Yeah.
Well, just to remind you that there were several struggles in several cities where a park became more than only some green, and more resistance was formulated in one or another situation. And I'm wondering whether this park is something where something more and larger can start, or maybe processes could encounter more resistance. I mean, just to throw something, because there were cases, cities, Zagreb, Istanbul, and similar. This is a project altogether, but I was just wondering whether for a plot of green, you know, symbolically a struggle could turn into something else. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of more time right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for this very inspiring ending, and yeah, it's also, yeah, it's good bone to bite on further on.
Thank you very much again, and thank you all. I hope we meet in Pristina very soon. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that would be nice, and all the best to you, and good luck with your program, and enjoy the rest of the days together.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.